Pacific Rim Uprising's director, a movie that's in theaters right now, has said that he'd like to do a DC movie based on the Doom Patrol, a lesser known super team in DC history that I've done videos about on this channel. And that's very interesting. He'd like to set it in the 60s, though, the time when the Doom Patrol was originally introduced in the comics. A lot of big super teams in Marvel and DC got their start in the 60s. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and the Doom Patrol. But the Doom Patrol didn't take off the way those other teams did, which is why not that many people know who they are today. The Doom Patrol has appeared in animation and, of course, comics, but they have yet to appear in live action yet on TV or in movies. That's going to change next year because they're going to be recurring characters in the live action Titans TV show that debuts later this year on DC's digital only service. But until that happens, we'll have never seen the Doom Patrol in live action before. But he would like to take them to the big screen, not just on TV where we're going to see them. Now, even though I've done videos about the Doom Patrol, I'll give you a brief, very abbreviated description of them. Their old 60s comics, when they came out, they were dubbed the strangest superheroes of all. And that's because they were people who got superpowers, but they thought of their superpowers as a curse because the superpowers would mess up their personal lives, their bodies. They would make them have to, separate themselves from society because their superpowers usually came with some big drawbacks like physical, impairments, things like that. And there were other things. And the Doom Patrol had a lot of strange villains. Like one of their arch nemesis was like this brain in a jar and a talking ape. And, there were a lot of weird things going on, trippy stuff in the 60s Silver Age comics. And that continued as time went on, later on in the 90s and the 2000s. They had a lot of very weird, surreal kinds of adventures. And in the modern day Doom Patrol comic, that continues with the whole surreal, strange, weird kind of tone. Now I'm going to take you to the article where some quotes where Stephen S. DeKnight talked about what he'd like to do with the Doom Patrol and why he's interested in doing them. So I looked at Doom Patrol at DC, something like that, which you can sink your teeth into and make it a little quirky. Don't get me wrong, if somebody popped up and said, hey, what about Superman or Spider-Man? Of course I'd say yes. I'd be stupid not to. But I'd love to get my hands on something like a Doom Patrol. Something a little bit lesser known. Doing a Doom Patrol movie set in the 80s, in the 60s, that would be heaven. He also likened doing Doom Patrol, since they're not that well known right now, how they could be made more well known if the movie's successful, similar to how Marvel and James Gunn did with Guardians of the Galaxy. If you recall, Guardians of the Galaxy, they were in Marvel Comics for several years, but the mainstream public, nobody had ever heard of them until Marvel and James Gunn put them in the movies and made them successful movies. So he kind of compares the fact that he might be able to do the same thing with the Doom Patrol if he got the chance. I grew up reading comics constantly, mostly Marvel and DC. It's like asking what kind of ice cream you want to eat. I love them all. Obviously, there's the big ones, Superman, Batman, pick any Marvel character. But for me, if I was going down the path of a big movie or quasi-big movie, I love what James Gunn did. A lot of people didn't know Guardians of the Galaxy. I knew it from the comics. I remember when it was first announced, I thought, well, that's insane. I don't know how they are going to translate Guardians of the Galaxy to the big screen. James Gunn did such a magnificent job. And Stephen S. DeKnight, I'm sure, is hoping he can do a magnificent job too. Now, he's interesting. He directed Pacific Rim Uprising. I saw Pacific Rim Uprising. I thought it was a decent movie. But, the reviews of it haven't been that great. I think it's like in the 50s or 40s on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know what the fan score is. I think that's a bit higher because the fan audience ratings on Rotten Tomatoes are usually higher than the critic scores because critics are really harsh these days. So I'd be game if he wanted to take them on and if DC and Warner Brothers offered it to him. They haven't, by the way. He's just saying he'd like to do it. But at this point, since the DC movie universe is so the reputation is so bad and, critics really don't like most of their movies, I think, if they do any movies going forward, they need to make sure they get a director who has a history of, if they can, a history of doing movies that critics love, with a great reputation, like people like Steven Spielberg or something like that, just to not take any chances. So Stephen S. DeKnight, even though I'd be very open to him doing this if he got the chance, I don't know if they should because he doesn't have, not that he's a fine director, but I'm saying he's not one that critics love all of his work and stuff. So, that would be risky. But again, it's not like studios haven't taken risks on unknown directors with great rewards. Like James Gunn, I don't think James Gunn had really directed much of anything I think that was hugely well known or successful before he did Guardians for Marvel. And, you know, there's been a lot of comic book people. The Russo brothers, they did Civil War and Winter Soldier, right? I think their first Marvel movie was Winter Soldier, Captain America Winter Soldier, which is a fantastic movie. But I don't think that before that. I think they did like comedy shows on TV. So, you know, maybe Stephen S. DeKnight, if he got the Doom Patrol, he could do something fantastic with it. So I'm not ruling the man out. I wouldn't like it to be set in the 60s, though. I'd like it to be in the modern day times, because I'd like the Doom Patrol to be able to cross over with the other DC movie heroes, because all the other DC movies take place in modern times, except for Wonder Woman, but she's an immortal goddess, demi-goddess, so she doesn't age, and, you know, they can do back-in-time stories with her and still have her be in the modern day, too. So, you know, unless they could find a way for the Doom Patrol to live forever or something, I'd like them to stay. I'd like them to be in current continuity with, you know, so they could team up with Superman, Batman, Flash, things like that. But, you know, maybe DC and Stephen S. DeKnight could surprise me. Now, I know I've been talking about this movie about what ifs, but let me be clear. DC has not hired him to do a Doom Patrol movie. He is not, you know, going to do that. He's just saying he would like to. It's a what if kind of thing. So I don't want you watching this thinking that, you know, oh, there's a Doom Patrol movie coming. There isn't. At least not that I know of and anyone has said. He's just saying, you know, if I could only do it, I'd like to. But anyways, what do you think? Would you like to see Stephen S. DeKnight do a Doom Patrol movie? And if so, would you like to be in the 60s or today or whatever? Or are you against this idea? Maybe you could say so in the comments. But anyways, thank you for watching. I appreciate your viewership. Please like the video on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, because I like keep doing this for you and want to keep on doing it. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.